Hey, it's Chris. Today I'm shooting on 4 iPhones running Apple's brand new free Pro camera app, Final Cut Camera. I've got one loaded up right in front of me. That's where I'm talking right now. I've got an angle off to my right for kind of a side view angle. I've got an angle directly above this desk here for a top-down view. And then I've got an over-the-shoulder shot for an alternative view of what's on the desk here. Speaking of what's on the desk, this is a brand new M4 iPad Pro and it's running Apple's new version of Final Cut for the iPad. And that actually is what's facilitating me being able to shoot this multicam footage with these iPhones as essentially the brains, the nexus of this whole setup. Now I'm gonna break this all down for you, but before we get any further, I'm gonna let you know I've got a 50% off July 4th sale happening right now on all the courses. My productivity course will help you get more done in less time in the Apple ecosystem with less burnout. 50% off, but also my course on going beyond the basics of Apple's Freeform app. So check out the courses linked up down below. They're all about helping you get more out of the Apple ecosystem and yourself, really. But that's what this video is about, getting more out of Apple's ecosystem. I love that they came out with these apps to make the most out of all this hardware. I feel like calling this the iStudio because I got 4 Pro iPhones, 2 Maxes, and 2 regular Pros running the footage here, and then the iPad. So as you're feasting your eyes on this footage, kind of taking it in, assessing it, seeing what you think, what you should know is that I'm shooting at 4K, 30 frames per second. This is SDR, so it's not HDR footage. And then I'm shooting at HEVC rather than ProRes for this. Not because I don't want to shoot in ProRes, I do. The ProRes files are so ridiculously enormous, which makes sense because the footage looks so ridiculously good, that it's really not feasible with the setup that I have right now to make that happen, although I'm working on it. So get subscribed if you want to see this studio space build out. I've got a lot of cool companies I'm partnering with to make what I'm going to call the ultimate iPhone studio. But you can see I can blow up any of these angles over here on the iPhone. We kind of get this Inception vibe going on here. But I've dialed in the shutter speed, the ISO here. So I'm running a 400 ISO and 1/60th shutter speed since I'm shooting 30 frames per second. And I've also come in and set the white balance to 5600K, aka daylight, because I've got some nice studio lights here, putting out some soft diffuse light and just making things look really good. But I've tweaked and tuned all the cameras for the specific lighting in here, which is something that you can do with this professional camera app. Now I've been playing around with this for about 10 days so far, and there's 2 things, maybe 3 things that I just absolutely love about this whole setup. Number 1 is just the convenience. I've got all these iPhones mounted on MagSafe mounts. That means I charge them, I get them out, I stick them on the MagSafe, and I'm basically ready to shoot. Contrast that with what I used to do for a multicam setup, which was haul out 4 to 6 Sony cameras, which have bigger bodies, gotta mess with the battery, insert the SD card, and it's just saving me a ton of time just on the setup and the teardown. At the moment, I'm recording the audio through Rode's Wireless Pro setup here. Now, I'm just recording it internally to this device in 32-bit float, but sometimes I'll connect that up to the iPhone there and record straight into the iPhone, which is just super convenient. I've got that main angle mounted on Rode's iPhone cage, which does have some cold shoes, so that just makes for a really seamless setup. But that's actually a good word to describe this setup, is seamless, because one of the other things that I love is that when I'm done recording here, I hit done and all the footage starts to wirelessly transfer over to the iPad, and I can start editing with that proxy footage there, while in the background, the full-size files with the high resolution load in so that by the time I go to export, it's all ready to go. So I'd really love to hear down in the comments what you think about how this is looking. Do you like it? Does it look professional? Can you tell that it's not shot on my previous Sony camera setup? I do want to note, in terms of workflow, what I found has been working really well for me is when I shoot 4 different angles like this down in the studio, I shoot in HEVC, but when I'm doing some B-roll and I need something really nice looking, I'll cut in some ProRes from the iPhone for all those gorgeous details. And you can see this in the latest upload that I did with the Moft MagSafe accessory. When I'm shooting the ProRes in little bursts of 5, 10, maybe 30 seconds, well, that's pretty manageable. And if you get 20 or 30 clips like that, you can still wirelessly airdrop those and work it into your workflow pretty well. Of course, the big bottleneck for shooting ProRes for all of these angles, not just for the B-roll, is not storage space, because you can get a big drive to hold all those terabytes, but it's not having Thunderbolt on the iPhones. And therefore, shooting maybe an hour of ProRes footage on 4 different iPhones is gonna take you hours and hours and hours just to transfer. And there's nothing you can do about that right now. Another huge convenience about this setup is that I don't have to mess with syncing up all the different angles here. Because when I start and stop everything with the tap of a button right here, here's the button, which you can actually move around, all 4 files have started and ended at the exact same time. So even if I don't want to edit this on the iPad and I just transfer this over to the Mac, setup is a breeze for the multicam. Sometimes on the Mac, multicam stuff doesn't sync up really seamlessly like you would think that it would. And in the past, I've had to do that sort of manually, which is a bit of a bummer, but it's kind of become part of my workflow. But with this setup, I don't have to mess with that at all. So this is all very practical stuff. I mean, this is what I live and breathe versus my old multicam system. The setup and teardown is so much quicker and easier. The exporting and transfer of files is so much quicker and easier. The multicam sync is so much quicker and easier. This really does a great job of illustrating what Apple can do that other companies aren't or can't. I'm kind of just blown away. Now, everything has trade-offs, right? I missed some depth of field and some other things, but I think they're acceptable trade-offs for somebody like me who needs to come in and just crank out a lot of videos as easily as possible. And after having tested this for several videos, sort of dialing in my thoughts about everything, one thing that I'm left with is that I think a lot of people are going to default to this when they're considering what they want to do for their video setup. And I'm not just talking about creator type of people, like somebody who does YouTube videos professionally, or a podcaster who's doing interviews professionally. I mean, even if you're a small business owner, maybe especially if you're a small business owner, and you need to crank out some kind of content marketing sort of material where you just sit down and it's easy to use and also looks good. I mean, all this would be pointless if it didn't look very good. And part of what I'm talking about is this is so easy to use that you don't have to be somebody who's really swimming in the camera world and knows a lot about cinematography and color grading and all the technical details and aspects. Even though I've tweaked some of that stuff here, you could just stick everything on auto and it's gonna look very good still. Really, this is one of my favorite things that Apple has done, has put out there in, I don't know, years, because it's just so useful. And not just useful, like this is really cool. This is cool technology, wirelessly shooting this really high quality footage, having it transfer and making your life easier. I'm impressed, I really love this, so hats off to Apple. You know, if you do the math and you start talking about camera bodies that are in the neighborhood of $3,500 without a lens, and then you start adding in a lens to go along with everything, I mean, to kit out a single decent camera is gonna cost you in the neighborhood of about $5,000. Now, if you're doing a multicam setup, you can do the math. Things get expensive really quickly. On the other hand, with an iPhone and iPad setup, you're looking at maybe that same price, around $5,000 or $6,000 for the latest, greatest iPhones that shoot up to ProRes and an amazing iPad to run everything, including edit on here if you want to. By the way, did you see those close-ups? I mean, this is looking good, and you do get a little bit of depth of field in the back. And then I can pull this in front of this main angle here, and you see a lot of clarity and detail. Final Cut for the iPad is like $5 a month, and that's nothing if you're gonna use this professionally to earn money. I love it. Like I said, I'm gonna be building this out with some other great companies, sending some really cool gear to make this look amazing. So get subscribed if you wanna see how this builds out. Also, let me know if you'd be interested in a course on how to get the most out of your iPhone and iPad setup in terms of shooting videos if you're not, let's say, a professional video sort of a person. Now, speaking of courses, don't miss out on the sale. It's linked up down below if you want to save 50% off as we celebrate the 4th of July here. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next video. Later.